And then I'm going to talk really quickly about power tools. So when we have power tools, the basic gist of almost any power tool you buy is it is a motor, a basic switch, and you plug it in. There's not much to them. And for some things, that's fine. But there's a couple problems. One is in makerspaces, we tend to have lots of equipment that's kind of all over the place, right? You might have a grinder that when you need it, you bring it out of the closet, or the bandsaw that you have to roll outside when it's time to use it. And so we end up moving equipment around a lot. Now, let's say that, for example, someone accidentally leaves this switched on, right? They're sawing or whatever. Let's say they blow a circuit breaker, right? So they blow a circuit breaker, and we'll say that means, right? They blew a circuit breaker, right? Power's disconnected, and they go, oh darn, what happened? And they run off, and someone trips the circuit breaker back on, and power returns. That tool's going to turn back on, right? In the room by itself with hopefully nobody near it. Or let's say that when you're rolling the saw outside, right, it's obviously unplugged, right? You're rolling it outside, and while you're rolling it, someone accidentally presses that switch, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then while somebody's setting up their work, somebody plugs it in. Guess what? Your bandsaw just turned on, and someone's hands were probably not where they should be. So this is actually called an accidental restart. This is something that in the industrial world is actually regulated to not be possible. Now, it doesn't mean people do that, but it is actually legally required in any workplace that any machinery cannot automatically restart itself. And so that is kind of scary, because the way tools come, even brand new, is they will naturally do this. They will naturally start themselves up and put everyone at risk. And so there's a way we can solve this with relays. So we can do what's called a latching relay circuit. And I know we're short on time, so I'm going to go through this one fast. So we've got a few things going on here in this diagram. Let's pretend this little lamp up here is our motor. We have our motor plugged in to a AC source, and it is being switched by this one pole of this two-pole relay. Now down here, we have some other source, right? In this case, it's a battery. And when I press this, current flows into the coil and activates the our saw, right? Great, you're using the saw. But what's different about this is a momentary switch. So when I press it, it releases. And you'll notice that when I release it, the coil is still active. That's kind of strange, right? That might not be super intuitive. And so what we've actually done here is a few things. So I'm going to turn it off. Oops, wrong one. So in this state, the way that you can get current to flow through this coil is either by letting it flow through the second pole, or by pressing this button. Either one of those will activate the relay. But the cool thing is, if you activate that coil via this switch, it then closes this relay, which lets it keep itself closed. So I'm going to press this just really quick, right? Depress it, release, but now since it's switched, it is latched into that position. That's why they call this a latching relay. And so that's something that's very, very common. It's just a few wires you add to any double pole relay, and you can use as kind of a latch on circuit. Now you would also you can have a switch over here to turn it off. But the advantage of this is that if you lose power or you unplug it, so let's say that we lost power here. Oops. So we lose power, power returns, it didn't start itself. It needs to be actively turned on again. And so that is something that's sometimes called a magnetic switch, sometimes low voltage dropout, or a latching relay. And you can buy products that do this for you, or you can make it yourself. And this is something running an industrial safety company and also having worked with all sorts of different maker spaces, it's a very inexpensive project that can do a lot to keep people safe. And it's also just kind of a fun thing to learn about latching relays, the fun way to kind of challenge people. And just with a few switches and other relays, you can add even more functionality. For example, let's say that this was a key switch. Let's say you didn't want every kid accessing your tools. Instead of just a push button, you could replace this switch with a key switch. So when you go over there, you can turn it on with your key, but then once they turn it off, it can't start again until you come back with your key, right? And so you can get creative with some very, very inexpensive parts. And so that in a nutshell is a few ways you can